Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the first seminar of the Lent term at the Cambridge Disaster Research Network. For those who are joining us for the first time, CDRN is a platform that brings together individuals interested in disasters and natural hazards from across the University of Cambridge and beyond. My name is Kusumika, and I'm a research fellow at the West Bengal National University of Juridical Sciences, Kolkata, and I'm one of the conveners of CDRN. I'm excited to be here today, joined by my fellow conveners to kick off this term seminar series. Today's seminar focuses on the planetary hazards and the disaster law, why the discourse is urgent. And I'm truly privileged to welcome our distinguished speaker, Dr. Amita Singh, to lead this discussion. Dr. Singh is a distinguished visiting professor at the National University of Juridical Sciences, Kolkata, a visiting professor at the National Law University, Delhi, and a senior fellow at the Institute of Social Sciences, New Delhi. She is also the president of NDRG, an Asia Pacific Disaster Research Group. She was previously the professor of law and governance at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, where she founded and chaired the Special Center for Disaster Research. Beyond academia, Dr. Singh is a practicing lawyer advocating for victims of environmental crisis and disasters. Her mix of academic knowledge and real-world experience is sure to make today's session even more insightful. So Dr. Singh will present for about 45 minutes, after which we'll open the floor for Q&A session. So without further ado, I invite Dr. Singh to share her thoughts. Over to you, ma'am.
Hello, everyone. It's another occasion to talk on disasters. Disasters definitely are increasing across the world, and climate change is only accelerating the whole process of disasters. It's not the disaster which is as important as the fact that nature is dying, human beings, animals, and the rocks and the trees are being wiped off. More than that, people are losing the processes of development and all the investments that they have put in development. This means that what is being invested into development is going waste. So, unless we prevent disasters, mitigate disasters, calculate the losses and damages in a very humanistic and holistic perspective, we may not be really achieving sustainable development. And that is, in fact, an important scheme for today's governance systems. When we talk about law and governance, we must keep in mind that every penny that goes into development should also primarily think about disaster mitigation and disaster prevention. Now, what is a disaster? It is not a one time silo event. That when disasters occur, then suddenly all the governments become very active. They start sending forces for rescue, for pulling out people, building up houses, rehabilitating everything that has been lost. But is this enough? Disaster, to be understood in its real nature, is an ongoing process. It is embedded within the system, it is embedded within nature, and it is embedded under the ground where we stand today. In fact, it's all a story of this ground where we are standing. Interestingly, let me share with you, uh, we are not even aware, the policy makers are not even giving a thought to this whole planet. What is a planet? What is the nature of a planet? When I say that disasters is an ongoing process, do we even give a thought to the fact that we are simply standing or trying to stand? We are wobbling. Huh? We are just trying to stand on an extremely thin rind of a very ripe fruit, the skin of a very ripe fruit. If we try to stand over it, we simply slide out. That is our existence. Why? because this whole planet is three-fourth water. And this three-fourth water has only one-fourth of land. So, how little is this land? This land is simply, you know, a tiny bit of this water, which is a thin film over the water, thin film of land over the water. And we think it is everything. And we keep on digging it, so much so that we forget that we are destroying aquifers, we are destroying the sustainability of the land, we are destroying the balance of the land, we are also creating fires and all those covers, the covers. We clothe ourselves, isn't it? Why do we clothe our human bodies? Because we clothe because we want to look good and we want to protect ourselves from the cold and the heat outside. Similarly, planet Earth has been clothed very well by, you may call nature, you may call Almighty, whoever that great person is. The designer, the Almighty designer, has clothed over the planet with thick forests, with thick land that we need to preserve and protect, with rivers as much as we need, with lakes and ponds that is needed to sustain the moisture, the humidity, and water for all the wild animals and nature and trees and forests. But we destroy them one by one, not even realizing that it is so suicidal. Would you call it a disaster? No, in the policy terms, it is not a disaster. It is environmental destruction. But this is a disaster. It is disaster in the making. Why is it disaster in the making? Because disaster to be studied has three very clear cut sections. If we like to scienticize the study on disaster management, we have three clear cut stages. One is pre disaster, one is during disaster, and one is post disaster. The pre disaster stage is a stage where you are trying to create a disaster. We try very hard to create a disaster. The nature is trying to put everything together and we try to rip it out. We plunge our heads into hazards where nature tells us don't come near, stay away. There are volcanic eruptions embedded within Earth in a number of areas, but we intend to go and construct over there. There are riverbed. The river cannot speak, but those who understand the language, the nature lovers, they say that we understand this language of the wild animals, birds, and rivers. The nature does warn people that don't come in my riverbed. I have only left the bed for a while because I'm going on a stroll on the other side. And I'll come back to this. If I come back to this, then you will be washed away. So don't construct here. But human greed pushes people to construct over there. And when they construct over there, then obviously what happens is that they are washed away when the river returns to its original bed. So whose problem is that? Whose problem is that? This is a problem which is embedded in human nature for inability to understand that this is a disaster. And there are laws for pre disaster. Don't disturb the hazard. Now, supposing there is a rock which is very fragile, like when we visited Kalimpong, I was part of the landslide task force. And people were saying that we've lived in this zone for ages, 100 plus years, and we've never had any problem. It's only recently that certain hotels were made, the luxury resorts and the motels, and road building has taken place over these rocks, these mountains, that our houses have started facing landslide. Almost 3 villages were washed away in the Teesta floods. And this is happening every year repeatedly because there has been so much of construction that now even the government washes its hands off, saying that what can we do? People have to be rehabilitated. The same thing is happening in the northeast, same thing is happening in Kerala, Pathanamthitta, and you go over and over again across the country. Wherever there are landslides in Uttarakhand, the landslides are provoked by unnecessary constructions over there. So nature does tell us, don't come in my way. This is my nature. What do you do that? Sons and daughters, they need space for themselves. After a certain age, they have a room for themselves. They want their own study table. They don't like to mess other people to mess around their places, their wardrobes, their beds, their study tables, their lifestyles. They want to have their privacy. And this is exactly what nature wants. Don't come in my way. Hazards are indicators that this is a place which is reserved for my activity. It is my playground. So stay away. Rivers tell that, oceans tell that, but it is not heard. And so disasters occur. If we just leave nature to itself, in fact, at one time, I used to be a great wilderness freak and used to visit all the wildlife sanctuaries, reserves, and loved being there. But lately, I've realized that this kind of an ecotourism is also dangerous for these places because they need to be left to themselves. Leave nature to itself because nature wants to be left alone for some time. It needs to revive. What happened during COVID? Nature was so happy, it was growing. There were some very, very fantastic results in the reserve forest, in the regular forest, in the village forest, city forest. Everything seems to be happy because there was no pollution around. And we are back in our gas chamber cities after the COVID because we again start interfering. We again start using excessively dangerous productive techniques. So, disaster is a process. That is what I wanted to say. And we need to prevent it from its inception. I come to the second point now. Is it enough to protect trees? Okay, you'll have to give me a second. I need to get a charger for my laptop. All right, so I come to the second point. The second point is that what is primarily important for disaster prevention? What is it? We need to prevent the trees. We need to prevent tree felling. We need to protect oceans, or we need to protect rivers. If you choose on a priority, the priority is the ocean. But who gives a thought to the ocean? If I tell you the nature of the ocean, as I told you, is everything. 50% of the oxygen and carbon fixation that we get is from the ocean. And ocean is not just 20 kilometers that you see. The maximum that human outreach has been in the ocean is 20 kilometers. Ocean is in reality in an abyss. We call it the abyss. 200 plus feet to 300 down below, not feet, sorry, miles. Down below is the ocean. And that is where a life as rich as a terrestrial life lives. And ocean animals are not like terrestrial animals who are very territorial. The dogs, the cats, the tigers, the elephants, they are territorial. The ocean uh, animals, creatures, all creatures, they travel across the wild sea. There are so many oceans from Baltic to Indian to Atlantic to Pacific, and then Black Sea, Red Sea, Blue Sea, all of them. They combine together, they are all connected, rhizomous connection of all water underneath. And these animals move around all throughout these oceans. And where do they derive their food from? Phytoplanktons. These are forests of the ocean, richer forests than what we have over the ground. Phytoplanktons provide almost 50% of the oxygen that we breathe on the terrestrial ground. And lately, Japan and China have started removing phytoplanktons from the ocean to do ocean agriculture. And we are gasping for breath already. It's not just going to come to the two countries, it's going to come to the whole planet because oceans wrap us up in a film of oxygen as much as they give us a land to walk over. The film of land and a film of oxygen. And we are trapped. If we overlook the ocean, we are trapped. But all the shipwreck and oil spills and all this transportations which are happening are actually happening over these areas. The abyss is a place where everything falls down and collects. And in a way, it closes down or encloses our prospective need for oxygen. But then let's move upwards towards the shore. As we move towards the shore, there are these mangroves, which really provide food for the 20 miles below of ocean, which is called the continental shelf. In international law, we have only been approaching the continental shelf, the 12 nautical miles of continental shelf that plays an important role in the sovereignty of the nation as well as in regional pacts and sharing of resources, neighborhood relations, and international law, resource distribution, and digging, mining, what you call marine mining, offshore mining, etc. But this continental shelf is a minuscule in the whole process of disaster management because the whole carbon fixation that happens in the mangroves is now being reduced to much less. Kerala has almost lost all its mangroves. And we were traveling to Odisha, and every time I travel from Utkal to Behrampur, the forested area, I pass through the highways which are constructed by removing the mangroves. There are very rich mangroves on both the sides. There is no water because the water has been blocked by the construction of the roads. They're big express highways. And you can see the shore on a little longer belt, a little stretch. There are lakes around, and mangroves are dried up. There is huge construction of houses between the mangroves, and gradually all these mangroves of Odisha are also going to go away. And then Odisha will cry on the hurricanes and tornadoes coming in, which are already, Odisha is in the front line of all these. But uh, interestingly, the local people don't even know, many of them don't even know, they respect them, this vegetation, but they don't even know about that these mangroves protect them from tornadoes and hurricanes and from tsunami whenever it comes, the high tides and all, because they are going away. Sundarbans in West Bengal, they have started regrowing mangroves, but it takes very long to regrow mangroves. And the future of this wonderful forest is already depleting across the world. It's across the world, but in India, it's disastrous. Now I come to the third point. The third point is that on this thin film of land and the film of oxygen, we are trapped. And yet, do we do anything to protect ourselves from the disasters which are in the making? We know that fragile rocks will fall. We know riverbed, the river will return. We know that the ocean floor has the abyss where the whole carbon fixation takes place. We know 50% of oxygen comes from ocean, but we destroy the ocean. You know what is happening, what happens when the wars take place, Russia and Ukraine and Gaza, and all the oil wells were there, and you know how the fire in California, that's all the rim of the very thin film of land is the rim, or say the shore of the ocean, where millions of creatures are continuously working like factory workers for the survival of humanity. They are fixing fixing carbon. They're fixing carbon and nitrogen, of course, and helping us to breathe. And we are trying our best to destroy them. What has happened to the West Asian seas? The whole of the from Atlantic to Mediterranean to down below Indian Ocean to Pacific, dangerous places. Also, as the mariners say, the the biggest and the most dangerous events that we have ignored in disaster management is the drifting of the drifting of the earth over the ocean. See, because as I told you that it's a thin film of land, it keeps on drifting. We don't realize, we think we are on a very, very big, monstrous piece of land and nothing can move it. But it's a very thin film of land which goes on drifting. The very the biggest ruptures at the womb of the earth down below at the abyss of the ocean is the deepest wounds we've created for earth. And that's where the rupture occurs. We go through the continental shelf and we plunge into that rupture, not even realizing this rupture today in the Indian Ocean may join the Pacific some years later. And uh, if you fix up, the geographical findings reveal that like Lego sets, if you fix up these land belts from the Asiatic region to the Eurasian region to the European region, they fit in very well, as if the ruptures are very real. But more interesting than that is something to know that the earth is still bleeding, even though the ruptures may have occurred 20,000 years ago, or the biggest rupture that occurred through the drifting of oceans occurred 50,000 years ago. The wounds of the earth are still bleeding. How do we know that? Am I a cynic if I say that? No, these are geographical facts. And how do the geographers and geophysicists come to say that? Because the most active volcanoes are at around the same ruptures of the earth. They're around the ruptures of the earth, which shows that the earth is still burning. It's inflamed. San Francisco, Los Angeles, the biggest townships that human beings have created, the rich human beings have created, all fire in seconds. See, nobody can fight nature. Nature will take its own course, whether it's a river, it's an ocean. When time comes, the ocean is going to envelop us and we are all going to sink into it. As it happens with rivers on a smaller scale, the warnings keep coming and we do not realize it. So, disaster is an ongoing process. That is what I wanted to say. And uh, from here, I move to a few other important points that emerge from here. So, now that disaster is a process, we need to have a set of laws that control human behavior, that control the greed. So, behavior, greed, the processes which enforce these laws. So I'm talking about behavior and greed. It's an ethical issue. So legal ethics need to prevail very strongly. And how do we impose legal ethics on national laws and on international laws? There are a number of laws which have come in the international arena as well as in the national arena. We call them IDRL. These are, you know, laws which have emerged out of these have emerged out of mm, effort of some very important international NGOs, International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent societies, and uh, Red Cross societies also. And in fact, a model act has been framed by the IFRC, which has you know brought brought up the international disaster relief and initial recovery assistance. So that is a very important document for legal specialists or those who wish to work in the legal area, for the reason that this model act has uh, broadened up the Geneva Conventions, the Genocide Conventions, and also the Convention on Civil and Political Rights, to the rights in disaster, and it has also broadened up the Convention on Racial Discrimination. So many of the international laws have been transformed and brought about by the General Assembly, special notifications and special regulations to be implementable in the area of disaster management also. And this Model Act, which came in November 2007 in the 30th International Conference of the Red Cross, has some important guidelines. International Disaster Relief and Initial Recovery Assistance, they are known as IDRL, as I told you. IDRL guidelines are recommendations to the national governments on what they should do about mitigating and preventing disasters. Of course, all of that needs separate lectures on each of the specific issue, but I'm going to be very brief so that when you hear me, you take back home at least some bit of the lecture. Uh, the video is already, protesting, so I know that I have a reaction coming from the unseen. I'm sure scientists after 20 years may say that all these inanimate things also have life, just as we are trying to have legal personhood for rivers and for animals and for trees. We need a legal personhood for the technology that we use because it has its own mind. So I'm sorry that this technology is reacting, but I would still say that when my lecture stops, you still have something to take back home. So when I say IDRL Act, it's a model act which IFRC and Red Cross Society International Red Cross and National Red Cross societies have been framing with a lot of effort from at least 20 plus years. And a lot of success is now coming through because IFRC is now at the helm of major decisions which are being taken by UNDRR in Bangkok. IFRC is located in uh, Geneva, but it works across the countries, General Assembly members. Now, what is happening in disaster mitigation nationally and internationally? These are two areas. Nationally, we are trying to find alternative energy resources. If we have, see, because disasters, major creations are thermal power plants, hydroelectric plants, and now that we are uh, translating the whole process into environment friendly energy, we are going in for solar and windmill and also nuclear energy. There are disasters embedded in all of them. Nuclear, of course, the most dangerous one and most scary one for a densely populated country like ours. And most of the power plants are mostly located at the seaside, ocean side. So that makes it more dangerous that one disaster can reach the abyss. And we know the Fukushima, uh, where the scientists vouch for the fact that nothing could happen to the Fukushima plant, and that plant leaked out the nuclear element and destroyed polluted the whole ocean floor and the ocean that side. And also the fact that when such things occur, the information may not come straight to the people, and there would be a lot of opaqueness in relationship between the government and the people. So we need to be very, very careful about taking decisions on energy processes and how we translate to environment friendly energy. Solar is a very good option, but it has uh, limited usages, and so are the windmill because you need huge uh, acres of land to set up windmills. So these are very important questions. The second question that comes in mitigating and preventing disasters within countries is the fact that if you take up just South Asia, because I'm better equipped to talk on South Asia, where my research is, South Asia has intersectional rivers, uh, intersecting mountains. One Himalayan mountain tells you the whole politics of South Asia. It is the South Asia is all around it. Then there are rivers coming from Indonesia down to Myanmar and to Bangladesh and to India to China. Each river is telling a tale of history. And we have regional pacts, like we have BRICS, we have Quad, and we have SARC, and we have nothing much to say in all these regional pacts where we extend our hand holdings to neighborhood countries and say we work for the rivers together, we work for the ocean together, and continental shelves, the oil spills and accidents will take place, or if people need to be rehabilitated or they get displaced, we'll work together, provide them food, shelter, and medicines when time comes. We have nothing in all of these. But there was a very important uh, regional pact that took place within the SARC countries, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, uh, Rapid Action in Natural Disasters. This was the big name. We call it SARAND, SARC, Rapid Action in Natural Disasters. So SARAND, we call it in short. It took place in 2011. That had some basic unanimity about how nations in the South Asian region would act when they are faced with floods, tsunamis, drought, or earthquakes or any other calamity, tornado, hurricane. They all come together. It's not that Bangladesh is different. It was all one in one time. Nature is one. Afghanistan, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. There is no separability. Nepal, it's all one. And if the land is one, we need to have at least some basic agreements on the fact that when nature reacts, the same nature that is uniting us, if it reacts, how do we act? And this basic parameter is missing out in all the regional pacts that we have with us right now. I come to the third point now. I'm dividing it into, first section was that disaster is a process, which I mentioned. How is it a process? And the nature of oceans, terrestrial ground, and the forests. And then I came to, how prepared we are in the national perspective, how well we are prepared in the international perspective. Now we come to that. International perspective, the moment you talk about international perspective, it is climate change. And when we say climate change, how well are we prepared in climate change? We have yet to achieve the Paris Pact commitment that we made that, you know, 1.5 degrees is, or maximum 2 degrees is to be the stop point for us. And how much has been happening? India and China are becoming the greatest heat creator. And now we have Trump, who's saying that does not believe in the climate pacts or climate commitments. We have many more nations raising their head on the grounds that we are underdeveloped and climate change commitments are going to be very tardy for us. What has India to do in the next 10 years, or say China to do in the next 10 years of preventing climate change? Climate is going to create millions of people as ecological refugees. Employment is going to be translated to some other forms, whether we are working on this transition which is going to take place, or transition is going to be as painful that people are going to lose their lives and their families. We have yet to work on that. We are not prepared for climate change. We are still looking for the causes of the climate change. Even though the polar bear has already raised the flag in the Arctic that we are drowning, and this is the beginning of the drowning of the human earth. And yet, we have not prepared much ourselves on the grounds that SDG goal 14 and 15, which is protecting the ocean, can really guide us through preventing the repercussions or the dangers of the climate change which is occurring. Climate change studies have also indicated some great scary futures for the weak communities, because the weak communities are all in the hazard zones. Poor people live where the garbage is being dumped, or the shores at the riverbeds. They are rehabilitated at the riverbeds or over fragile mountains. And then the second category, women. We plan policies without a thought for intersectionality of discrimination that occurs. Women of a rich family may have a car, may have support systems, may have access to medicine, care, prevention, and findings of the early warning system and education to take care. But a poor woman may not have access to all these so called support systems. But when we put all women on a single platform, we overlook the fact that this poor woman who has no access to education and support systems and capital may be the bigger loser. So, when we define policies on losses and damages post disaster, we need to have international policies that take care of intersectionality. And General Assembly resolutions have come up, 2 3 resolutions have come up, the 75th resolution that talks about intersectionality. And UN Women has also been repeatedly talking about, in the last 5 years they have repeatedly spoken about consideration to intersectionality of discrimination, gender discrimination, while designing policies for women in disaster management. And disaster management is seeping very strongly in most of the developmental policies for children also. Now, under these considerations, we need something very important, that development need to take care of environmental concerns primarily. It should merge itself with the environmental restrictions imposed by nature. Unless it does that, disasters would continue to be recurrent uh, events over planet Earth, and we might not have any weapon to protect ourselves. I think I'll stop at that and go with the question answers. Is that okay?
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an insightful and thought provoking presentation.